Okay. Greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
Good to have everyone with us today.
Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. This is Jackie.
Hello, Jackie. Let me lead us in prayer as we get started today. Father, we thank you again that we can call you our Father and that we can trust you with our lives. We continue to look to you, Father, to give us direction and wisdom for what you want us to be doing in each parts of the world where you've located us. We pray, Lord, that you would let us be, what can I say? We can be peacemakers, as you ask us to be, that we could be people that are facilitating positive change where that change is needed. We pray, Lord, that you'll give us skills as we are trying to learn how to research issues and how to take that research and turn it into practical transformation strategies. And I just pray, Father, that you will guide our time together in this session, let the technology work well. Just pray your blessing on people's health, and families, and jobs, and provision, and protection. Thank you, Father. We just praise you and love you, and we just commit our lives in this time to you. Ask you to lead us through the Spirit. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Somebody needs to mute their mic. You've had some noise.
Yeah, and you make sure you mute your mic when you're not talking, just so we don't get a lot of background noise. Yeah, and then remember to turn your mic on when you want to say something. So, well, this is the third week as we are. I know this course moves through a lot of content very quickly, and we don't always expect you to grasp everything, but hopefully as you keep working with some of the concepts and working with your particular topic and utilizing databases and libraries and whatever you have access to in terms of resources, I'm just praying that the Lord will make your work more and more clear, and so that you can be doing what God would have you want to be doing in a particular area of the world. We're going to spend some time today on the problem statement. I've asked Dr. Henry to give a presentation on that, and so she'll do that in a minute, and also possibly do some introduction into the research questions, which are the kind of foundational to the kind of research that you want to be doing. But before we get into that, let me just ask if there's any questions right now that either of us or any of us could answer that are just kind of pressing at this moment. I will say this week you will start using the template, which you will be able to find on the info page under the files area. There's something called, see, this says dissertation template APA or something to that effect. But I think, as I've mentioned before, really want you to use that template for all of your future assignments now, because you'll be working on the proposal. The idea is to fill in a particular section of that template each week. Like I said, this week you'll be working on the problem and context sections there in the kind of the first two sections of that proposal chapter. The idea then would be for you to fill in those sections and then upload that whole template to the assignment area, so that we can look at the week that you're working on. But I always like to many times look back to see the work you've done in previous sections, just to make sure that everything is flowing together well, and that there's a good logical order of your work. So please do that. That'll be a great help. Learn to use that template, and again, upload it to the assignment area each week. Okay, any thoughts, questions on that issue or any other issues? Okay. Well, as you think of questions along the way, that'll be fine. Let's go ahead and have you, Dr. Henry, begin to work on the problem statement area. Let's just jump right into that when you get that PowerPoint, and we'll be following along with you.
Yes, I share my screen and then I'll pull up the presentation. So today we're going to look at the problem and purpose statement. And this is taken from Dr. David Weintraub. Sorry. Okay. Oh. Okay. I forgot this is not a PowerPoint. So what is your problem statement? A good problem is an issue or difficulty of some significance, urgency, and priority, whose investigation will make a useful contribution to knowledge. If you already know the answer, if the answer can be found by a simple search of existing studies, or if the answer is totally predictable, there's no need to do the study. The problem statement. What is the problem? The problem statement is not a question, a topic, or lack of something. You just state what is wrong or needs to be addressed, not why it is a problem or how you plan on addressing it. And that's important. As I've commented to some of you and in general to the class, I know that in the class, our default position is to think in terms of solution. However, before we get to the solution, we have to be clear as to what really is the issue. And that is where research comes in. Because certainly when you think about the issue, you bring to that thinking certain assumptions, your belief system, your culture, etc., and that is fine. However, the nature of research is that you need to be objective so that in the very beginning process, you have to be willing to acknowledge what may be your biases, your cultural interests, commitments, etc., that may interfere with the objective process that is required of good research. Having done that, then you're ready to look at the problem as objectively as possible. So the problem is to state what is wrong or what needs to be addressed, not why it is a problem or how you plan to address it. The why of a problem is the reason for and the significance of the problem. These could be the lack of something, the proof in identifying your problem statement, and we've had you do that, is to start looking for the evidence that the problem exists. And one place that we look for evidence is in terms of what other researchers, what others may have said about the issue under consideration. Who has done what about research on this problem? the presenter recommends that we use a matrix to help us to frame out the problem and the purpose, because the matrix will give you a visual representation of the process. So when we think of problem statement, we want to think also of the goal. When we think of evidences, we want to think of outcomes. When we think of possible causes, we want to think of proven solutions. It shows the alignment between the problem and the purpose statements, and it helps you to plan for the review of literature. It helps you to align the problem and the purpose with your research questions. Let's look at the matrix one step at a time. An example here. The problem is students in high school Spanish 4 and 5 classes are not passing the advanced placement AP test in Spanish. And the goal is to have students pass the AP Spanish test. So you see that simple but powerful alignment between the problem statement and the goal. The creation of the purpose statement. It is based on the goals to alleviate or to reduce the problem. So to do that, you create your purpose statement. So you translate this issue and you say the purpose of this study is to discover what tools are needed to better prepare high school students for the AP Spanish exam and to measure the level of efficacy of those tools. You notice how succinct and to the point this statement is. The purpose of this study is to discover what tools are needed to better prepare high school students for the AP Spanish exam and to measure the level of efficacy of those tools. And so we look at what we call the hypothesized causes, which leads to the hypothesized solutions. Causes, solutions. For example, it could be as a result of the lack of teacher training in advanced conversational Spanish language. So the solution could be to have teachers attend AP training provided by the College Board. Another reason for the problem may be the lack of test prep materials. So your solution may be to incorporate AP test prep materials into the curriculum. Yet another cause may be that there is too much time spent on reading Spanish rather than natural conversation in class. And so a solution may be to add daily conversation time to your lesson plans. And then a fourth probable cause may be that students are not invited to share what they feel is missing in the Spanish 4 and 5 curriculum. So your solution may be to have students share their own experiences about learning Spanish. So you see the relationship between possible causes and possible solutions to the problem. Remember, the lack of something is not a problem. It's what's happening because of that lack. That is the problem. So a lack is not a problem. The problem is what happens because of that lack, whatever that lack may be. Planning the literature review. You take some keywords you use in the causes and the solutions, and you use them to start your preliminary literature review. You make sure that the literature review has both of the following. What the literature says may have caused the problem, and what the literature says are proven, note the word proven, interventions to solve the problem. So when you look at the literature, you want to look at cause and you want to look at solutions. your next step is to create a matrix of your own using the following template. So you identify your problem statement and then you identify your goal. Decide if your study might be quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods. And then you complete one or both sections below. So another matrix you would develop is, as you read the literature, what evidence do you see for quantitative approach to the study? What evidence do you see for qualitative approach to the study? Because that will help you to decide what approach you should use or what the best approach may be. And then you create your own purpose statement. So you look at your causes, you look at your solutions, and remember again, the lack of something is not the problem. The problem is what is happening because of the lack of something. What I will do is stop here and allow you, let's go back to the first step. No, let's go to this one. Think of what you have been discussing these last 2 weeks. And given the example that we've just looked at, see if you could identify a problem statement that matches your interest and then the goal. And I just pull up for you the example that we looked at to help you to remember how to state it. The problem statement, the example that we looked at, students in high school Spanish 4 and 5 classes are not passing the advanced placement test in Spanish. And the goal is to have them pass the advanced placement test. So you think of your problem statement, write a statement. So you notice the problem statement is just one sentence. And then you write the goal. I'd like you to do that, and then I'd ask you brave ones to share with the rest of us so we can give you some feedback.
Not try.
Okay, just let me have your name.
Okay. This is Shegun.
Okay, go ahead.
Young people in developing countries do not have appropriate skill sets for successful entrepreneurship.
Okay.
That's a problem statement.
Okay. Your goal?
The goal.
Let's have the two together so we could see how they match.
Okay. The goal is with accurate education, accurate entrepreneurial education, young people in developing countries will be successful entrepreneurs.
Okay. Everybody's heard that? I'd like to hear comments on that. Problem statement goal. Could you read that problem statement for me again and the goal so everybody will get it?
Young people in developing countries do not have sufficient skill set for successful entrepreneurship.
Okay, and the solution?
The goal is with accurate entrepreneurial education, young people in developing countries will be successful in entrepreneurship, in entrepreneurial endeavors.
Thank you, Segun. Okay, let me get some feedback from your colleagues.
Would the goal be a little simpler than that, meaning to have successful entrepreneurial programs in developing countries?
That's not what he said. We'd have to look at what he said. What is his, first of all, go back to his problem statement and then look at his goal. And my question is, do they match? What is there was one key word in the statement.
If I can recall, Hubert here, if I can recall, I think it is lack of adequate entrepreneurial education in the statement.
That's not what he said.
Okay,
So go and
sorry,
read
I
that
might have missed it.
statement again. Sigon, could you read out your statement again? Did we lose him?
He's muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Young people in developing countries do not have sufficient skill sets to be
Stop a
successful.
minute, just a minute. Did you hear that word? What is the key word he said there?
Sufficient skill sets.
Skill set. That's the word I heard. Continue, Sigon.
All right. Young people in developing countries do not have sufficient skill sets to be successful entrepreneurs.
Skill set to be successful entrepreneurs. That's the problem that he identified. The need to have skill set to be successful. What was your goal, Sigon? Could you read it again for us?
The goal is young people will have sufficient entrepreneurial education to be successful entrepreneurs.
Okay. Do you see or do you hear what I hear?
Would it then be what significant skill sets just no, maybe that's a question. To develop appropriate skill sets for children in developing countries, wouldn't that be the goal?
Yes, if you identify the problem as skill set for success in entrepreneurship, then one would think that your goal would be to develop those skill sets so that people would be successful.
Would it be identify and develop them, or just to develop them?
Good statement. Identify. If you're going to do both identification and development, or if you're going to just do one, that is up to you from a research perspective. But what I wanted to, and Sigon, do you understand what we're saying here?
Okay, yeah, I get it now. That
You get it? Yes.
Yeah.
You see, your
the key words
focus.
must, yeah.
Skill set is what you said. That's the key phrase there. Skill set for successful entrepreneurship. Now, the other issue that from a research perspective that you would have to define, address, is what you mean by successful entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Because successful defines the kind of entrepreneurial experience that you expect this study to produce. So that's going to be an important piece. But your focus is on skill set to develop entrepreneurship. So then your goal should be to do just that. Is everybody clear on that? And could somebody else like to give us their example? Could we get
Yes.
one more example? Who is doing it? Somebody said yes, but please give me your name because I can't see you because I'm looking at my screen.
Okay, can I try? Simon
Okay, is that Kone?
Ishola.
Oh, I'm sorry, Simon. Yes, you go ahead.
Okay. For the problem statement,
Mm-hmm.
I have theological education is not adequately funded in the NBC, that is the Nigerian Baptist Convention.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And your goal?
The goal is adequate funding should be made available to theological institutions in the Nigerian Baptist Convention to provide good quality theological education.
Okay, so what is your focus? What is your major focus here?
The major focus is provision of adequate funding for theological institutions.
Okay, okay, good. And then may I suggest that you're going to have to explain what you mean by adequate funding?
Well,
no, you don't have to do that now. You don't have to do that now. But I'm just explaining as you move forward. That will have to be defined.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
I hope those two examples have helped you to understand how you link your problem with your goal. Your problem statement with your goal. That's what we just did. Okay.
I'm going to say one thing just because that's been a helpful designation for me too, as I'm looking at that. Right now, the assignment for this week is to identify the problem statement and then the context. I think at this point, I think I would like you not to get into the context as much, but I like the idea of identifying the goal. Sometimes the issue, you know, where to put that goal. Should it go in the problem statement section or the purpose statement section? And at least from my perspective, I think that would be a good conclusion for the problem statement section is, okay, what is, based on the problem you've just indicated, what is your goal? That would probably be a good way to end that problem statement section. Would that be your, would you concur with that, Dr. Henry?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's do that. I will alter this assignment because I really like that idea that we make sure we have those two issues very clear in our minds. The problem, which is the issue or the difficulty that you're addressing, and then what is the goal of this particular study. You know, once you're clear on that, then we'll be able to, you know, go into some of the other sections. But I really think for this week, that needs to be the clarity. Go ahead.
I would like to ask a question.
Certainly. Kone? Mm-hmm.
Yes. While writing the goal, do we need to include how we intend to achieve the goal, or just write the goal?
Just at this point, you just identifying the goal.
Okay.
That's what you're doing at this beginning stage. Remember, this is a process step by step, right?
Okay.
Right. I mean, you may be ahead of the game that way. That's fine. But at this stage, we're just asking for that. Now, let's look at what we call the hypothesized causes and the hypothesized solution. So the next step, having identified your problem and your goal, what are three things that you might identify as having contributed to the issue that you're interested in looking at? And remember, the lack of something is not the problem. And if I could have two other persons to share with the rest of the class, your thinking. Remember, no answer is going to be right or wrong, but we're doing this together to get you to understand the kind of thinking that you need to bring to this process. So I'll give you a few minutes and then I'll have two of you who have not yet spoken to share with the rest of the class.
I'd like to try.
Okay, go ahead, Cornelia.
Yeah. My problem statement, I'll start from there and then go to the hypothesis.
Okay, yes, that's how you do it.
Okay. My problem statement is immigrant churches are not achieving significant missional impact in their new communities in North America. And then the goal is immigrant churches need to be equipped or helped to achieve better missional impact. The hypothesized causes, one, cultural differences between immigrant churches and their communities. And then the hypothesized solution is to be more immersed in the community. The second one cause is hierarchical administrative style of leadership in immigrant churches. And then the solution is to introduce maybe servant leadership or another type of leadership style that relates with the people better. Maybe I can stop there.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have the rest of you, at least one or two of you, comment to Conley on what he has just shared with us.
Hubert here. I think Conley's goal synchronizes with his problem, right? And looking at some of the hypotheses in terms of causes, differences indeed seem to connect well with what might have been causing the problem in the first place. And so people become comfortable in space and maybe not stepping out. And so hence the need to provide a solution of immersing them in that community. I think also the second one with maybe the leadership style, the cultures that we come from and how they operate. And maybe having a different perspective in terms of a leadership approach seem to be connecting well with that initial problem statement.
Okay. Thank you, Hubert. Okay, would somebody else like to try? Give us an example of your You have to start with your problem statement, then your hypothesized cause and your hypothesized solution. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can I hear from one of the ladies, please?
Hello, this is Janine.
Thank you, Janine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still having, I guess, my question in terms of formulating my problem statement.
Yes.
In the sense that it's originally it had to do with looking at the need for improving the educational system in Liberia, the whole transforming the educational system. But as I'm doing the research, which is, as you shared, is a part of the process, I'm trying to sort of fine tune that a little bit more. And the distinction, initially I was looking at the successes, with successful businesses and looking at how their leadership, maybe transformational leadership attributes in successful businesses, how that could be used as a model to do the same on the educational side. But then your question about what is my evidence, or what is the proof that this is that there are businesses that are utilizing the transformational leadership model. That was a question that sort of got me thinking on a slightly different track this week. So, and then do I really need to deal with the comparing of a business model, looking, comparing that to the educational model, or what exactly am I trying to address here? And I feel that I'm trying to address the transformational leadership skills in the educational system. So maybe talking about the attributes, the transformational leadership attributes being utilized in the educational system to improve the educational system. So I'm sort of changing my thinking a little bit, and from the research that I'm reading. So I guess the statement could be, because you were talking about this, what is the problem? Is
Yes.
that the first part, right?
That's right.
Okay, so the problem is the lack of, or no, because it's not the word, the lack.
Remember, the problem is not about lack.
Exactly.
It's what is happening because of the lack.
Okay, so it has to do with the transformational leadership attributes that I want to see utilized to improve the educational system. So it's that sentence that I'm struggling in terms of making a connection. And the goal would end up being, the goal would end up being that there would be an impact on the learning outcomes for, the students that are impacted by that system.
Okay, but before you get to goal, you have to be able to state what the problem is.
Clearly, yes. Yeah.
And what you have just said in terms of goal does not necessarily match what I think I hear you say, or what you were trying to say in terms of problem, if you're specifying the problem as rooted in transformational leadership attributes. So you're going to have to do some more thinking through on that. But I appreciate your willingness to share with us, you know, some of that thinking.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to comment on Janine's beginning piece?
Lack of something is not a problem.
Okay, could we have one other person share their thinking at this level?
I would like to share. Can you hear me?
Yes, and
Okay, good. This is Julia.
Julia, wonderful. Go ahead, Julia.
Okay, for problem statement, I actually identified two, but I'll start with one. There are many factors contributing to health disparity among Black women. For my statement. Or I was grappling with women living in impoverished neighborhoods experience inequities in health and are more susceptible to poor health outcomes.
Okay, so when you share that there are two interests that you have.
Right.
My initial reaction as I've listened to both statements is that the second statement is clearer.
Okay.
More in line with what we're talking about.
Okay. So
remember, it's not the lack of that you're looking at. You're looking at the outcome of that lack. Okay. So could you read that second statement for us again?
Okay.
And then identify a possible goal.
Okay. Women living in impoverished neighborhoods experience inequities in health and are more susceptible to poor health outcomes.
Okay.
For a possible goal, I was thinking of training practitioners or healthcare workers to become more culturally competent, which can influence their perception about the patient and also affect the care and information they deliver.
Okay. Good. Any comments from your colleagues? What do you think of, do you see a match between Julia's statement, problem statement, and her goal?
Sorry about this, but could you repeat the goal for me, please, Julia?
For the goal, training practitioners to become culturally competent can influence their perception about patient care and also affect the information they deliver to reduce the health disparity or health inequities in women.
Comment from you, from your colleagues? Do you see a match between the problem statement and the goal?
I think the goal is telling us what she intends to do, not necessarily where she's going. Okay. She's telling us she's going to do training practitioners.
Okay.
I think from the problem statement that women in impoverished neighborhoods are more susceptible to poor health conditions or poor health outcomes. The goal may be looking at making women in impoverished neighborhoods to have better health outcome.
Good observation. Good observation. Julia, did you hear that?
Yes, I heard that, but I'm not looking at the condition of the neighborhood. I'm looking at how, because of the poverty, they experience the inequities in health, not so much the condition of the neighborhood. Because they are poverty stricken, they experience maybe I should say higher rates of inequities in health.
Yeah, but that's linked to the condition.
Okay.
Poverty is a condition.
Okay.
It is a condition, so that would be correct, that it is a condition.
Okay.
Could the problem then, sorry, this is Shegun.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wondering, could the problem then be that the health practitioners are not adequately trained?
Yeah.
Could that be the reason why women are, because your solution or your goal is so that these health practitioners are properly trained. So
Okay.
the problem then could be that these health practitioners are not properly trained, thereby creating the gap, in the economic empowerment of the women in this neighborhood. Because the solution is tending toward training the health practitioner to deliver good, best practices.
That's a good observation, Sigon. Julia, do you hear what he has said?
Yes.
And this is, as you do this exercise, you're going to see, it is so important that you are able to make a clear link.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you just did is you did a shift. You talked about the women in impoverished neighborhood not getting proper health care.
Mm-hmm.
And then your solution, one would think, should be directly related to that issue.
So more for the women, not so much the practitioners?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I understand that you, without your saying it, you're jumping to, and that's fine, a hypothesize cause, in the sense that you're saying that the reason why there is this inequity is that the practitioners are not culturally aware or knowledgeable in terms of working with these women in this context.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why you're thinking in terms of the training of the practitioners. But on the other hand, we would have to acknowledge that the training of the practitioners alone,
right,
may not be the solution.
Right.
There are other things that you're going to have to put into that mix.
So how do we advocate for the women? So like implementing health education for the women.
Right.
So they can also take responsibility for their health.
Right.
Okay.
You've just answered your question beautifully.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Good. Okay. Well, I hope this has gotten you thinking of your own situation. The next piece that he raised here for us, and we're not going to go into it just yet, but just this will be put into the course outline, is how you take keywords and use them to start your literature search. So like you noticed how I've been pushing you to identify your keywords, your key concepts, because that's what you're going to use to help you to find the relevant literature. Research questions. This week, we've started the discussion on research questions. So let's look at what this professor says in terms of developing your research questions. You take your problem and purpose statements, and then you create at least 3 research questions. Hint, the research question should be something that you can only answer by conducting a study. If the answer can be found in the literature, then you don't need to do the study. And then the next thing is that you want to note whether the questions are qualitative or quantitative. Creating questions to answer these research questions. Once you have your research question, it is time for you to design or use another's instrument to get the needed quantitative or qualitative data. And so it's critical that you have alignment between your problem statement, your purpose statement, and your research questions, and then your instrument questions. You have to have alignment. And usually that is where the struggle comes as we work together in the process. Because as you've just seen from some of the examples that you shared, it is so easy to move from one to the next and make a shift in terms of what you want to do. So you have to work at getting that alignment. The problem statement, the purpose statement, the research questions, they have to all be aligned. Okay, I think this should bring us to the end. Okay, good. I hope this helps you as we move in this direction. Dr. Payne, over to you.
Could you go back, Dr. Henry? I think it
Sure.
must be, it's probably maybe the first slide, using a matrix to help your frame.
Okay.
See if I can find that slide. I think it's back
Yes,
toward the
I think it's
beginning. Now that we've seen. There we go. Let's look at that for a moment. What I'm trying to I'm trying to organize this content into the template that we're using.
Sure.
In terms of what we've just said, in terms of the problem statement section, we're gonna, a student would identify, very succinctly, and I would say I'd like to see, one sentence to start that problem statement section, which identifies the difficulty or the issue that's being addressed, and then evidences. We've got that in our current template, which is when you are, well, maybe we should say goal. Let's have goal. Second would be, what's the goal of the study based on the problem statement? Okay, what is our goal? And then evidences, in our problem statement right now, we ask for at least a few documentation of others that have addressed this problem, which helps to support the idea that this is indeed a problem. The possible causes and solutions, I'm thinking, would probably then go into the purpose statement section. Would that be your understanding, Dr. Henry?
Yes.
So we could possibly have hypothesized causes. That would be someplace that a student could begin to talk about the causes that he or she sees at this moment, and those are hypothesized, and possible solutions that might be addressed in this study. So those two issues would be in the purpose statement. Would that be your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So let me make sure we get that clear then. So in the problem statement section, we're identifying the difficulty or the issue. We are giving what is the goal that is for this particular study based on that problem statement. And then you could document, a few other studies that, other authors who have addressed this kind of a problem, maybe not in your particular context, but in other contexts. You would give evidences of the kinds of studies. You maybe give a quote or something from other authors that indicate some support for this kind of an issue. So I'm looking at three things there in the problem statement. You're identifying the issue, identifying the goal of the study, and some evidences that help back up that this is indeed a recognized problem that has also been addressed by others. That would be the problem statement. The purpose statement, we are going to identify possibly some of the hypothesized causes, some of your hypothesized solutions, and then in our purpose statement, we also then have the research questions that are discussed at that point, based on the issue, the problem, the goals, the causes, the solutions. Then you begin to design your research questions based on those factors that we just discussed.
And I would like to make a suggestion here to students as you read the research literature that is of interest to you. Pay attention to the research question sections and see if you would want to use any of those questions as is. There's no reason why you couldn't do that, because what you would say in your research is that this author studied the issue and this was the question that he or she used. These were the questions, and these are the same questions you would like to use. So you're acknowledging that you didn't create those questions, but you're giving credit to somebody else, but you could certainly use those questions as you seek to address the issue that you are interested in. So you're not left on your own, as it were. Pay attention to the kinds of questions that come up in the studies that you read.
Hello, this is Janine.
Yes, Janine, go ahead.
I had a question. I wanted to read something that I just wrote.
Sure.
From what we've been talking about. So the problem statement could possibly, I just want to see if I'm going in the right direction. Students' learning outcomes are negatively impacted from top-down leadership styles. And then my solution was student learning outcomes can significantly be improved from the transformational leadership approach. Is that more in the direction of the thinking that you were sharing?
Okay, so what you are doing here is you're linking student learning outcomes to leadership styles.
Yes, which is where is more the direction I want to go in.
Okay.
I'm thinking about it in terms of what you were saying about the problem is what happens as a result
of the problem. Yes.
Yes. So what happens is the impact of very low learning outcomes. And so I'm trying to understand how I can shift my own thinking, like this is where I want to end up.
But where do you want to end up? You mentioned low learning outcomes. Where you want to end up?
Improving those learning outcomes.
So your goal is to improve learning outcomes.
Yes.
Okay, that part I get, that your goal is to improve learning outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question to you, or my appeal to you, is you need to find the evidence to justify what seems to me you're proposing a direct link between, actually it's about leadership style.
Yes.
And student learning outcome.
Okay.
That to me seems to be where you're going. You
Yes.
want to show that there's a direct link.
Yes.
Between leadership style and
Yes.
student learning outcome.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with a question or a comment? Thank you, Janine, for sharing that. Anybody else? If
It
not,
seems like we're going backward in conversation, but I've been looking up, like, is there a list somewhere? And I found a generic list online, but a list of theoretical frameworks that are like most used within Bakke candidates, like, you know what I mean, like a general list. So as we're thinking through our theoretical frameworks, we can make sure that we're staying on point based on the different frameworks.
Yeah, I
The
think
answer to that would be no, and that is not the approach you use in research. There are as many theories as you can think of problem statements. So there's not a list that you're going to go to and say, well, I have to stay within this list. This is your research and this is reflecting your interests. And there is a part of the process that requires you to be creative and unique in terms of your own position. So it's not like there's a list of 100 theoretical frameworks or issues and you may tick off and say, okay, I've covered X, Y, and Z. That is not the approach that is used at all. You are free to make your choice. All that we ask of you in the research process is you justify the choices that you make. Does that make sense to you, Suzanne?
Can I make a suggestion?
I think it will as I proceed further.
Okay, good.
Can I make a suggestion to her question or inquiry?
Sure, go ahead.
So I've noticed throughout my literature review, you may identify some frameworks that cater or support the work that you're interested in studying.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're doing your review, you can pay attention to some of the theoretical framework that has been used, particular to your area of interest.
That's a good idea and suggestion. That's exactly what we want you to be able to do. Yes.
Let me ask, what guides us in choosing the theoretical framework to use?
The literature that you read.
Mm-hmm.
The literature.
So what I'm trying to say is, for example, I'm doing something on missional, better missional impact.
Yes.
There are theoretical frameworks about contextualization,
yes.
Theoretical frameworks about culture. What guides me to go the way of contextualization or go the route of culture? What informs
that? In terms of the theoretical framework, it's not that you use one or the other. It may be that your study uses both.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? But that choice is up to you in terms of, because here's what happens when you're doing the research. You become the expert.
Okay.
Or you should become the expert in terms of your reading and reviewing of the literature in the area of interest. What we ask of you when you go through the process is we ask questions so that you could justify the decisions you have made in terms of the pathway that you have taken. But you are seen as the expert. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me say one more word on that issue. In the situation that you've just mentioned, kind of working with these, you're working with the redeemed.
Yes,
church,
yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, that's what I was remembering. Your goal. Just one second. I'm kind of just looking something up here. Okay, your goal is. You're working with RCCG churches in the United States.
Yes.
Okay. You all, let's just put it in the language that we've been talking about. What's the difficulty or the problem that you perceive that you want to work on?
Immigrant churches are not achieving significant missional impact in their communities.
So missional impact in communities. How would you define that? I mean, are we mainly talking about evangelism, having an influence in a community? Those would be some of the kinds of issues that you would define as missional impact.
Yeah, an holistic missional impact. The Mission Day is another theoretical framework that is the churches are like foreigners in their communities. They are not reaching the communities.
I see. Okay, they're somewhat isolated from those communities, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were looking at it, that's the problem, then your goal, of course, then is to do what?
My goal is to equip the immigrant churches in a way that they can be able to make missional impact.
Right. Okay. So that's the goal. And if you started to hypothesize on some of the causes, one cause you might indicate would be a lack of contextualization, right, of the gospel message within a particular community environment. So that could be one of the causes that you would hypothesize as a real cause of that ineffectiveness, right?
Yes, contextualization of the gospel message and even the ministry work, the administrative work.
Right.
This administrative style.
Okay. So,
and the culture.
Theoretical frameworks then that would relate to that, contextualization is a whole study in itself. There's quite a few different concepts, principles, theories related to contextualizing the gospel message within a particular culture. So, both of those are parts of a theoretical framework, contextualization and cultural theory, I think of, a person that I use often, Hofstadter. He's got a whole methodology of looking at various cultures, and he comes up with a whole set of characteristics of a particular culture that he has then helped, businesses, for example, adapt their particular products, approaches to a particular culture. We who are, say, working with a missional approach or evangelization or whatever word you want to use, we could then also use those kinds of cultural characteristics that, say, Hofstadter has discovered when we are helping churches contextualize the message to a particular community that is demonstrating a particular kind of culture. So cultural theory, contextualization theory, those are both components that you would probably have in your theoretical framework.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Dr. Payne.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate that particular presentation. That even helped me, and we're always trying to improve. Just some of the organization of, say, the problem statement, that's even helping me even a little more to maybe even refine our template even a bit more. We're always refining that template as we all learn different new concepts, new ways of presenting material. And I think this particular presentation, I think, was very helpful, at least for me, for a few items there in the problem statement. So I'm going to make a few revisions in the template and in the week 1 assignment, so we can really focus on those issues, that the issue, the difficulty, and the goal. I think that'll probably be a major issue for you this week. Somebody had asked, can you actually have a list of theoretical frameworks? And I think, as Dr. Henry said, that's not really the way to go about doing that. I made a list just for myself one time, just to kind of get an idea of what are some of the concepts that I think are often used. One of the hesitancy I have of putting that list out is because then a student just looks at that list and they think they can just kind of pick from that list. And then that kind of short circuits your thinking. Mm-hmm. It colors your thinking. Yeah. And so I think that's the issue where I'm probably hesitant to put out a whole list. But I mean, I can verbalize, I've just verbalized to, contextualization, cultural theory, theology of work, our whole issue of transformational leadership perspectives. That's a theoretical framework in itself that can be then divided into many subcategories. Okay, mm-hmm. But yeah, the issue is if you put out a list, it's too easy then to look at that list and just sort of plug those into your dissertation process. So we really want you to kind of look at the literature and hopefully, you know, the kinds of principles, the theories, the concepts that are being utilized in, say, particular literature you read will help you identify your theoretical framework. I think it's Miriam makes it very clear that, you know, a dissertation could be written from the perspective of various theoretical frameworks.
Yes.
If you're an educator looking at a particular system, you may be looking at you'll be using some educational principles. If I was an architect looking at an educational system, I may have some theories of buildings and some of those kinds of issues that I would begin to look at that. If I was a sociologist, I may look at a classroom and I'm going to look at the matrix of sociological relationships going on in that classroom that I might not look at as much as if I'm looking at it strictly from an educational theory point of view. So yeah, the theoretical framework identifies really the lenses that you are approaching a particular issue from, and your particular background, the discipline, you know, whether it's theology or sociology or business or psychology or education, those disciplines in which you are working are going to help you define your theoretical framework. Okay, any other questions, issues? Okay, well, I appreciate you all getting together with us. I think we spent an hour and 15 minutes. So that's how I'd like to kind of hold these sessions to that. Again, I'm going to make a few little modifications in the assignment for week 1, so watch for those. And I think I'm going to also make put a few additions into the template, especially under the problem statement and under the purpose statement, that will encompass the term goal. I think that's a good word, I think, that we can emphasize in the problem statement. The issue we're working with and what's the goal of the study. And then the evidences, you know, are some of the documentations that you may find will give you evidence of others that have worked on that issue. Within the purpose statement, you know, we have a section there called intent, but what I think the two words that really help me here are causes and solutions, hypothesized causes and hypothesized solutions. Those could be appropriate content, but it's important though to say hypothesized, okay? Because the research you do is going to help you answer some of those questions in terms of causes and solutions, all right? But you could include that in your purpose. You know, from my perspective at this point in time, I hypothesize, I think these could possibly be some causes that I would want to research, okay? And I could hypothesize this could be some solutions. One of the things that Dr. Henry and I have been trying to kind of emphasize in the last few terms is that, and we call it, say, the transformational strategy, okay, which connects into the solutions. You could hypothesize on what might be some solutions, but we want to make sure that you design your research questions in such a way that they help you identify causes and help you identify solutions based on the population of people that you're working with. So causes and solutions are going to be some primary factors that you're trying to determine based on the research methodology that you put forth, and your research questions will reflect how the kinds of questions the big questions you're asking in terms of the causes and the possible solutions that relate to the particular problem that you're addressing. Okay, well, hopefully I think that will all become more clear. And like I said, even we as faculty, I know Dr. Henry and I, we've wrestled back and forth on some of these concepts, and as I wrestle on them, sometimes they become more clear. And so then I refine, you know, parts of our particular school's curriculum and templates, etc. So know that we're all in a learning process, you know, and I think we all have to have that humility that we are always going to be learning, and that's a good thing. All right. Let me see, there's one more thing in the chat. Okay, no other questions that I can see. All right, keep working on week 3. Looks like you've got a good start in the discussion area. And by the end of the week, I'm going to want a, kind of a written attempt at this problem statement, which will include the goals, the issue you're dealing with, and try to put that, as we've just said, trying to put the problem, what is the difficulty you're working with, and then the goal, the language you use there should somehow match, and that's what I'll be looking for, will somehow match the way you've stated the difficulty, okay? And we'll practice that, okay? And you can maybe be talking about that within the discussion, the rest of the discussion for this week. All right, let's close up the session. Again, thank you. And we will be looking at your work as you continue this week in the discussions and then the written assignment.
Okay, thank you, and have a great week, everyone. Goodbye.
Right. Goodbye now. And this session has been recorded, and I will get that link out to all of you.
All right, thank you.